Well, power is the ability to affect others to get what you want. And you can do it in three ways. You can coerce people, so-called sticks. You can pay them, carrots, or you can attract them and persuade them. And that's what I call soft power. So carrots and sticks are hard power. Attraction and persuasion is soft power. And they're all ways of getting others to do what you want. Soft power is often interpreted by some people as simply meaning cultural relations. And some complain, oh, well, it doesn't have much effect, it's just soft. Others claim too much for it. They said that, it can solve all problems. It clearly can't. For example, it's not going to solve North Korea's nuclear problem. So the term smart power, I developed that as a way to say in practical, day-to-day policy, you've got to combine hard and soft power. But you want different mixes, different combinations in different situations. And it's interesting to see that Hillary Clinton picked up smart power as a slogan for the Obama administration. I think a lot of people today try to say, well, is the world bipolar or multipolar, or how do we explain it? And the answer is there's no single dimension. Back in the old days of the 19th century or the early 20th century, when military power dominated everything, it didn't matter much. But today you have very different distributions of power on the military level, the economic level, and the transnational level. Let me use this metaphor of a three-dimensional chess game. Think of a board where on the top board of the game, military power, basically the United States is the only country with global military reach. But on the middle board of this game, economic power among states, the world's multipolar. It has been for 20 years or so, ever since the European Union began to get its act together, and now with China joining in. And you go to the bottom board of transnational relations, things that cross borders outside the control of states, like climate change or terrorism and so forth. Their power is chaotically distributed. It makes no sense to talk of unipolar or multipolar or bipolar. And so in that sense, the three-dimensional chessboard helps to remind you that there isn't one single way in which power is distributed in today's 21st century. One of the problems is a country can have more power resources than any other. For example, the U.S. has more resources to produce hard and soft power, but if it's inefficient in converting those resources into outcomes, that's the problem of power conversion. And, the United States government was born to produce, if you want, or to protect liberty rather than produce efficiency. And so very often, if you look at the battles between Congress and the executive branch, or the freedom of the press, which may make it difficult to control leaks and so forth, there are times when America is not as good at converting all its power resources into outcomes we want as we might otherwise like. On the other hand, some of that helps our soft power. The fact that we are a country which lives up to democratic ideals and freedom of speech and so forth may make people admire us, even though it may make us less efficient on any given policy. I think we'll always have a government which has a degree of inefficiency because it was designed that way. The old joke goes that the founding fathers created the government we have so that King George couldn't rule over us again, and neither could anyone else. So we're not about to give up these things which create inefficiencies because they do preserve liberties. Democracies often have more problems with power conversion in the sense that power is spread domestically. There's a legislature and executive branch, and they can interfere with each other at times. Sometimes they reinforce, sometimes they compete. Autocracies often don't have that kind of a problem. On the other hand, autocracies over the long term fall prey to a different problem, which is they begin to believe themselves. There's not independent criticism. And so they can make a different type of error, not too much competition, but just the opposite, not enough competition. I first wrote a book about American power 20 years ago called Bound to Lead. At that time, the conventional wisdom was the United States was in decline. And I didn't think that was right. And I think that the predictions I made in that book actually turned out to be correct. But then from 2001 on, we made the opposite problem. Not thinking that we were in decline, but thinking that we were so powerful we could do whatever we wanted. And that led to hubris and to mistakes like the invasion of Iraq. And now we're back into thinking about decline again. Public opinion polls show a majority of Americans think the country's in decline. What I try to argue in my book is that these cycles tell us more about psychology of the American people than about reality. In reality, we're not doing that badly. America was about a quarter of world product in 1918, became about 50% of world product after World War World War II, which is artificial because other countries have been destroyed. Gradually we decline, if you want to use that word, to about 20-25% in 1971, and that's about where we are today. I think what's happening in the world in the 21st century is two great power shifts. One is the shift from states, and there you have a power transition, if you want, from west to east. If you look at Asia, in 1800, Asia was more than half the world's population and more than half the world's product. By 1900, it was down to 20% of the world's product, mainly because of the Industrial Revolution in America and Europe. Now, in the 21st century, we're seeing Asia returning to a proportion of world product consistent with its share of world population. That's sometimes called the rise of China. It's much more than that. It's actually a general shift back to a more normal relationship from west to east. I think that's a problem that we can manage. I think actually it may be good overall in the long run, but it's going to take some managing. The other great power shift of the 21st century is the shift away from all governments, whether in Asia or in America or Europe, to non-governmental actors or non-state actors. And that is something that happens because of the enormous progress of information technology, which means that the barriers to entry in playing a major role in international politics is greatly diminished. It's now very cheap for anybody with access to Skype, for example, to communicate around the world. And what we see is this power diffusion leads to non-state actors who can do things they previously couldn't do. Some of them are very good, like Oxfam. Some of them are very bad, like Al-Qaeda. And also to super-empowered individuals, as we saw in the case of WikiLeaks. So these two shifts, power transition and power diffusion, are going on simultaneously. And we're going to have to learn how to work with both of them at the same time.